Masterclass. All right, welcome everybody to another Accessible Travel Planners Masterclass. I had a huge coughing fit for like the first time in weeks right before I got on this call, so I am stuck on a little cough drop. Try to keep that under control. Hopefully everything will be okay. Today we are talking about um, thriving in travel with chronic conditions, pain, and medical complexities. And I decided to call this one Empowered Exploration because I think oftentimes most of what we're talking about today is are what's considered more invisible abilities, like differing abilities or specific needs that sometimes even the person dealing with them doesn't necessarily um, recognize or understand that they need to have special accommodations. And then this is something that accessible travel, an accessible travel planner can help you out with a great deal. So um, chronic conditions doesn't have to define your travel experiences. All right, so I am going to be talking, like I said, I have my special guest, my sort of definitely a leader um, in talking about this kind of stuff because she has a very unique combination of her expertise and her background as an occupational therapist, as well as living and thriving with many chronic conditions and um, issues herself. So she's going to be sharing from both a lived experience place and a professional and now a certified accessible travel planner. So this will be awesome. All right. So welcome to the ATP Masterclass for July. It's already over halfway through this year for 2025. Um, so we're basically talking about how we're going to transform the way you think about travel with chronic conditions. So we're going to explore some practical strategies, kind of do some definitions, and other things that will make travel more meaningful and possible. I myself have a lot of, I deal with chronic pain and certain chronic conditions as well, in addition to things like, PTSD and other neurodiversity. So this has also kind of been a culmination of a personal journey for me as far as helping myself travel, not just, I think what we see is a lot of people either they avoid travel or um, they are, they go on trips that just end up exhausting them and, kind of being, like not what they thought it should be, because maybe they didn't have the help or they didn't have all the knowledge or there's so much out there now that it's really kind of fun to customize travel for each individual because we all have our stuff going on. So a little bit of why this matters, and like I said, why we're talking about it, and I feel this is what sets us apart as we talk about the aspects of accessible travel and making travel possible for all, regardless of age, ability, status, whatever, is because most people, when they think about accessibility, they think about ramps and roll-in showers and, maybe some hard of hearing stuff. But we get into we get into chronic mental health, seniors, um, neurodivergence, and diversity and autism friendly stuff and whatnot. So we really like to take a broad look, and we have a growing body of people who have both personal experience as well as some sort of trade or background that they combine with that to help others experience the world in a way that's empowering and exciting. So 60+% at least adults live with some sort of chronic condition. We'll define what this means later, but I'm pretty sure if I asked almost every single person on this call either has a chronic condition or they know someone who does. More than half of the US adults live with at least one chronic health condition, creating a significant population with specialized travel needs. And that's another thing that if you're listening to this masterclass as a person who's thinking about getting into accessible travel, or maybe just even needing an accessible travel planner, or becoming your one for your family and your friends, whatever level you sit at. This is, this is something that, you can really look into, because it's almost limitless as far as the need goes. The need is huge, especially when you scratch beneath the surface to, to find people who deal with some of these more invisible conditions, or maybe the lesser defined conditions. So 85% feel travel is inaccessible. And this is the travel avoidant people. The vast majority of people with chronic conditions believe travel is beyond their reach due to health limitations and accessibility concerns. Um, and 100% of people deserve travel opportunities. Everyone deserves to travel, and experience the enrichment, joy, and perspective that travel brings, regardless of health status, or physical limitation. So we aim to replace fear with confidence through targeted information, compassionate support, and strategic planning. And because travel isn't just for the perfectly healthy, because what does that even mean anymore? So, understanding chronic conditions a little bit more. So, chronic illness, is anything that's a long-term health condition that typically it may progress slowly, or it may just require ongoing management. So obviously, like autoimmune disorders are usually in that boat, and that's a wide range, right? That autoimmune is anything from MS to rheumatoid arthritis to, Crohn's disease, or anything like that. And other conditions like diabetes, or respiratory COPD. We have a lot of people who use oxygen that want to travel, but there's a lot of questions and fears around that. And then also cancer, heart disease, and any of those other, those conditions sometimes can become chronic, or the effects of, like, say, chemo or something like that. That I know people that live with peripheral neuropathy because of that, because of taking chemo, or they may have some other, like, lymphedema or something like that related to breast cancer and having a mastectomy or something like that. So, chronic pain is persistent pain lasting longer than 3 months, often continuing after injuries heal or accompanying chronic conditions. So, things like fibromyalgia, arthritis, neuropathic pain, back pain, you name it, right? There's a lot of us have chronic pain issues. I was in a bad car accident when I was 18, and I have joints in my leg that I've then further abused, that are now telling me, I was a marathon runner after that. And so they're now telling me every single day, and I have to wear braces and stuff like that. I got to pack those braces around with me to wear them at night and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that pain can bring along with it, including medication, all that kind of stuff. And just needs to, um, be comfort riding around comfortably in transportation, when you're in your hotel room, all that kind of stuff. And then, sorry, I'm getting to the end of the cough drop. Um, Medical complexities are multiple or rare conditions requiring specialized care, equipment, or treatment regimens. So dietary requirements and restrictions, sleep apnea and other breathing issues, ongoing chemotherapy and treatment, and specialized medication needs. We have actually um, several certified accessible travel planners and whatnot, and people as a part of our organization that are, cancer survivors. We have people with MS, all that kind of stuff. So there's a need. They've worked to crack the code in their own lives and help make travel enjoyable. And now they're passionate about helping other people do the same. So, some common travel barriers. Physical barriers represent just one aspect of the challenge faced by travelers with chronic conditions. It's not just um, hold on, gotta meet somebody. It's not just, is there a ramp or not? the emotional, logistical hurdles, fears, anxieties, all that kind of stuff. So we definitely want to look at things like, the other barriers that these people might live with, including unpredictable health. Even our fearless leader, Sarah, who is our team trainer, she had to duck out of something at a part of her coaching program and giving a presentation where she had to travel because she had a flare up of her conditions. So, these unpredictable health things can happen. Fatigue, symptom flares, and day-to-day variability make planning difficult and create anxiety about travel commitments. Um, Medication management, obviously, some people are taking pills throughout the day, or they may have to do some sort of infusion or injections and all that kind of stuff. Refrigeration needs, complex schedules, and concerns about access to medications in unfamiliar locations. That's a huge one. Specialized needs such as equipment transport, mobility assistance, dietary restrictions, and sensory sensitivities require additional planning. Emotional burdens, such as anxiety about unknowns, feelings of isolation, and fear of being perceived as a burden to travel companions, and people that they're traveling alongside. And then public misconceptions about chronic conditions and pain are often invisible disabilities with poor understanding of specific needs by those you come in contact with while traveling, because sometimes they may not be fully aware as well. All right, so we aim to be we're big on mindset in all aspects of our business, but certainly where it comes to our own travel or helping other people travel, getting into a mindset of how can we make this happen, and and going from there about figuring out what's possible and what will be the most joyful and enjoyable and whatnot. So everyone deserves to travel. It's not a reward for being healthy. It's a fundamental human experience that belongs to everyone. So we aim to create joy and connection. Travel offers unique opportunities for joy, rest, and human connection that contributes significantly to overall well-being and quality of life. And honestly, like travel has, you all see it like travel is my therapy. It has literally um, healed wounds in my heart, mind, and soul. Just solo travel, traveling with others, meeting others along the way. I think I'm blessed to have been to something like 47 countries, and 47 states. That's crazy. So the we like to think about the how, not the if. So the question isn't whether you can travel, but how to adapt travel to your specific needs. Every destination has multiple ways to experience it, and we focus on progress and planning, not perfection. Empowerment begins with a thoughtful preparation, not with expectation of perfect health or perfect experiences. We all have this, social media comparison now where you see people just, worrying through, recently one of our travel leaders spent 10 days in Switzerland, and I think she spent 13 days in Switzerland, and I think she stayed in 9 hotels, different hotels. They were doing like a train and hotel trip. There was a heat wave when that happened. So there was a lot of, even though she may not deal with chronic conditions, like someone like myself or Amberly looking at that going, that would be completely exhausting, for us. And that's part of the reason we ensure that when you use an accessible travel planner or you become one, we get to really dig deep into the specifics of what people have going for them and how we can accommodate and ensure. Because if you go to Switzerland in March or April, you still might get to see a little snow. Maybe you can stay in a couple of different spots, versus 9, which I think they thought was a little much, and they didn't realize there was no air conditioning. So those heat variations are something to consider, and something that certainly an accessible travel planner will consider. Oops. Okay, so what is accessible travel for those with chronic conditions? Accessible travel extends far beyond wheelchair ramps. It encompasses accommodations for anyone with chronic illness, invisible disabilities, and sensory needs. So we focus on things like flexible pacing, creating itineraries with built-in rest periods, and the freedom to adjust as needed. I just helped a family of 9 travel to Italy. They didn't outwardly, it was someone I knew from high school, they didn't outwardly have what I would consider any chronic conditions or anything. But first of all, they were teenagers and all the way up into their 60s. And, it kind of came out later that one of them had POTS and one of, like there was definitely some special needs that needed to be considered. They were going on a cruise, so they wanted to start for a few days in Rome and Florence beforehand. And I've had the privilege of having lived in Italy, so I really recommend it because I've flown across the pond back and forth several times, and I know that it is exhausting, even if you have no differing conditions, to have, potentially, I came back from the West Coast a couple months ago. It was a 9-hour time change. And then I went back to work the next day and I was literally like, that was a bad idea. So, but I didn't have a lot of choice at the time. But like building in an extra day to adjust and a couple of things like that, and then build them in as you go. So if someone says, I've got 10 days and I want to see 5 countries and stay in 7 hotel, like we just do a lot of like education on creating flexibility and rest and ways to do that throughout the day and throughout the trip. But even someone who has like a more um, pronounced condition and is not traveling, across the world. I heard a story once of a friend who took his friend on a trip who had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and they just took him from like Missouri to San Francisco to go see a baseball game one last time because he loved the um, forget what they're called, the Giants. Anyway, so he took him, oh, like they took him on a plane and they had all the wheelchair stuff, like they had all the pieces and parts, but he was too exhausted by the time he got there because by the, even a shorter flight within the US or whatever the case may be, you can get very you can get extremely tired and want to and he just couldn't go. He couldn't go to the game. And so we've actually discussed and we're creating alternate plans for people with like terminal illnesses and life-threatening neurodegenerative, whatever the case may be, to have a travel that's closer, to their home, but is still considered like they could have gone to Lake of the Ozarks, and sat at the beach and it would have been a couple-hour drive versus a plane, a rental car, public transportation, and having enough endurance to go to a game. So we really take all of that into account. Obviously, medical access is pretty important, proximity to healthcare facilities, and planning for care continuity. I took a trip back in the day. One thing, I'm prone to infections because I have a reconstructed face and sinuses. And I was in New Zealand for 3 weeks with my sister way back in 2004. I had to go into the hospital. I ended up having cellulitis in my face. I had to stay in the hospital for 3 days. We had to push our trip back to Fiji when we were going to Fiji. And then of course, like, I realized if I would have been in Fiji when that happened, it would have been a different story because they were really talking about if I would have waited one more day, it could have gone into my brain and it could have been a lot worse. So that proximity, we want to say that every person can take every trip, but if you're a brittle diabetic plus you have edema and, all these things going on, probably not going to send you to Africa or, somewhere in the far-flung, more third world aspects of the world. We're gonna focus on a place that you can get medical help if you need to. Nutritional needs, obviously, accommodating dietary restrictions and meal timing requirements. My dad's on a medication for he has chronic leukemia. He has to fast for 2 hours after he eats and 1 hour before he eats take his medication. So he has to set timers when we travel. I traveled extensively with him in the car during COVID and just when I was back in the States a couple months ago. And he will, he has to set the timer. We have to remember, to do that so that he doesn't get hangry and all that kind of stuff. Um, there's a lot that goes into that, right? And there's a lot of food allergies, and you may not have, I've sent people to what was considered a really gluten-free friendly place, and all of a sudden they're texting me going, we don't know which is which because all the signs got mixed up. It was in Mexico and all that kind of stuff. So it's really important to, we do a lot of verification of the different things that we were told. These people actually were very, it was more of a budget trip. So they did figure it out though. They went and talked to the concierge, and they got it figured out to where they could ensure that they were eating gluten-free. So safety planning, preparations for flares, emergencies, medical management. We try to, we want people to have fun and go where they want to go, but we want to have the safety plans in place. Plan for the hope for the best, plan for the worst kind of scenario. We do a lot of what we call, since so many of us are therapists, we do some, education, travel, prehab, all that kind of stuff to make sure that you're the best version of yourself when you get to go on your trip. And so we do advanced planning as well. I've had people come to me with some pretty interesting stuff going on, and they want to go like, next month. And I say, you know what, I can help you do this, but it's not gonna be for next month. It's hot, everybody else is on vacation there. If you have an autoimmune disorder, then, you might be more prone to not being able to do anything, so there's so much that goes into it. And then of course we like to create the personal autonomy and maintaining dignity, independence, and control over your experience. So this has become, sort of that was the sort of the reason for creating this in the first place, is that we just saw a huge need. But people are out, and especially as COVID started to lift and everybody was like, I think there's just a lot more YOLO, FOMO, whatever you want to call it, going on, and people are just ready to travel. Okay, so planning for medical needs, documentation and medications, carrying medications in original packaging, bring doctor's letters for all prescriptions, translating things if you need to. ChatGPT is amazing, you guys. If you don't have it, you can just upload your med list and say, I would like to have this in German. I've been doing this lately a lot, and I write letters to my doctor. He does pretty good in English, but I've had some medical conditions come up, and then I was also fired while I was on medical leave for the job that they recruited me over here. So they're in the process of leaving me high and dry. So I also have a lawyer that understands pretty much mostly what I'm saying, but I do a lot of just translating of stuff back and forth in Chat GPT. So even if you're on the fly, if you have the app, just have your stuff loaded in there and have it ready to be translated. If you're going to a country where they don't speak your language. Um, okay, and then pack 50% more medication than needed. Make sure everything is in its original packaging. I don't think like normal things, I've never had a problem with prescription medications, but you never know if it might just be super easy just to have a doctor's note in like your medical app or something like that that you can refer to if there's a question. And just be careful about things like marijuana, because that's not a federally regulated thing. So a lot of times you can kind of get yourself into trouble if they, you know, sniff out something that smells interesting, and you can't back up that you have that. So that's been a problem in the past too. We have people that use medical marijuana to control pain, and even getting on the cruise ships going into Mexico, they won't let you have it. And they do the drug sniffing dogs and whatnot. So that was a huge issue for a couple people who went on a cruise a couple years ago, that they weren't able to have that. So you got to think about all of that. Emergency preparedness, create emergency contact cards, list diagnoses and medical allergies. Of course, now it's in your apps, and I would put it also in your photos, text it to other people that you're with. Actually, I as a travel agent have keep that stuff on file if I have someone traveling with complex medical needs, so that if they contact me and say, "Hey, we're out here with no not good cell phone service and something's come up, can you pull that list and email it to the hotel or something?" It's like you just never know what's going to happen. Medical alert jewelry, or, like I said, apps on the phones and stuff like that. Researching hospitals and specialists that do what you do, or that might have what you need if it comes up. And then, of course, you're in case of emergency. I'm not talking about deporting you. So you can have that in your phone. There's also like emergency call features on some phones as well too. You definitely always want to get an eSIM if you're traveling abroad so that you can communicate within that country. Or if you have something like T-Mobile, I have T-Mobile in two countries, and so I'm pretty much covered with some kind of service all over the world without being charged an insane amount. Um, Insurance and evacuation, we always get travel insurance for our people. There is absolutely no reason to ever travel without it. And side note, if you are a travel professional, you get an annual policy for dirt cheap that if you have minimal stuff going on, it's really good to have, because if you have more medical needs, or some type of, or if you travel frequently, you might want to purchase another annual policy, but they are very comprehensive. And I just traveled down to Turkey. I was getting sick on the way down. I actually went into the hospital. They did a bunch of tests, and I walked out with over $4,000 worth of medical bills, and my travel insurance repaid it all. So, always, 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 always get travel insurance. Verify pre-existing condition coverage, consider medical evacuation, membership, which that is also usually included in our travel insurance, but sometimes people, can get a global medical policy, or something additional to their travel insurance as well. But usually most travel insurance is pretty comprehensive. Document policy numbers and contact information, understand coverage limitations and exclusions. So usually the travel insurance medical stuff will take over after your basic health insurance that you might have in your country, or in the US if you're paying through the nose for it. Then it will you have to submit it to your medical insurance first. But always just good to be prepared, and um, go from there. So, all right, managing pain, energy, um, and making strategies for that. Planning makes all the difference. So, oops. The key to successful travel with chronic conditions lies in thoughtful pacing, comfort preparation, and knowing your limits. So that's just huge. Life has gotten way better for me when I plan to get there early, take a nap. I upgraded to diamond status with Hilton so I can go in their executive lounge and enjoy a light dinner, drink, happy hour, and free breakfast in the morning. So I do hotel breakfast a lot, so I'm not constantly, or I get places where I can make my own food, so I'm not constantly like having to figure out where the next meal is coming from. But you want to move at the pacing that works for you. Schedule rest days between active days, planning morning or afternoon activities, not both. Book accommodations close to the main attractions. Get your own personal comfort kit going. I recently started traveling with um, noise canceling headphones, like really good ones, like over the ear. Um, and it has made a huge difference, especially I'm very sound sensitive with one of my neurodiversity features is auditory sensitivity. So that's just made a huge difference. Um, you might need heat packs, compression items, something to sleep, neck pillow to sleep on the plane or whatever. And then there's also digital tools like apps and reminder alarms, accessibility, review platforms, or just even Google Maps has a pretty decent, way to review to see what's going on. And there's a few others that we recommend to people based on what their needs are. Um, Almost every, like MS, you'll find Facebook groups and information where people are sharing information about different things that help them. Um, uh, and then obviously pain management, meditation apps, whatever you would have at home, figure out a way to access it on the road. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna spotlight you. So this, I really just like, I'm so excited that Amberly gets to come on and speak about this because this has really become her passion as she deals with um, some of her own issues personally, health wise, and as a person that can no longer safely and effectively work her OT job physically and probably spiritually as well, like so many of us. But she is, she's just got a wealth of knowledge and lived experiences, and she's helping a lot of other people. So, welcome. Let me see if I can do the little highlight thing. I don't know if I can do it when this is on, but if you just want to unmute yourself and go from there. So.
Hello.
Kimberly. And we would like to, this middle picture, first of all, I have to say was when she came to um, our team retreat in Vegas a couple months ago. It was super fun to finally meet her in person. And, but she, again, she was giving tips along the way to help other travelers. And I remember just on the way back, you were talking about how you did use, like wheelchair transport just to like save your energy, and she just gives awesome little helpful tips. So kind of tell people your story. I always think your story about you know um, your OT life, and then what led you to what happened to where you had to change and leave that, and how you got into travel, starting your own business and all that kind of stuff. So tell the people a little bit about your history and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks for coming. And, I started out life with a genetic condition, but I was doing pretty well functionally. Like there were things here and there growing up that kind of seemed like something was going on. But I went through occupational therapy school, worked as an OT for over 10 years and was just getting like injured a lot. And, little things were happening where I was like, what is going on? And so finally, after my second child, which pregnancy kind of brings out everything in this condition because it affects like your ligaments and things like that with the hormones. I eventually got diagnosed with a connective tissue disorder. And my doctor was like, just keep going as you are and, don't change anything that you're doing. Um, so I had to really like go into support groups and really figure out like how to live life with this. In the meantime, I got injured at work because I was still going as is and, thought I could lift people and push heavy wheelchairs and things like that. So that kind of started the process of me trying to adjust my career to my needs. And it just kept going downhill from there until finally I got knocked out because of permanent activity restrictions, and my employer couldn't accommodate me, so they let me go. And from there, I thought the answer was to start my own private practice and kind of do things on my own and like accept patients that I knew that I could physically handle and things like that. And I worked hard at that for 4 years and burning the candle at both ends. Um, and eventually my health took a toll where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I was recovering from a spinal cord surgery where I found out about accessible travel. And I was just like, this sounds perfect for my skills and my background and things like that. So I just jumped right in. And it's been downhill from there. But yeah, that's kind of the background.
Cool. And I know you've taken a couple of trips yourself. I know, where'd you go last year to the beach and
Yeah, South
Vegas?
Carolina.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, tell me about a couple of things that you learned personally about um, traveling and with your new kind of enlightened, like, you know,
Hmm.
focus on, traveling with these, chronic conditions, and I know you
Hmm.
deal with pain. You kind of have a little bit of everything going
Yeah.
on. So,
Yeah. I mean, when I had the spinal surgery, I had to fly halfway across the country. And so I really had to learn pretty fast about traveling with like conditions that I couldn't ignore anymore. And it was still invisible. So like I was still able to walk short distances. Um, but with clothes covering the incision and things like that, like I wouldn't look like I was ill. Um, so I had to kind of get over like the stigma of like asking for help and taking the breaks like I needed to. Otherwise, I would pay for it later. So that was like a really, really big thing to learn when I did that. And then just from there and starting as a travel agent, I really thought about like, and people inspire me too, like, don't worry about asking for assistance, even if you don't look sick. Um, because like they don't see me later when I'm like laying on ice packs and like I can't take a shower that night, or I can't play with my kids and things like that. So I'm just like, I don't care what people think. I'm going to ask for the wheelchair assistance if I need it. I'm going to rent a scooter if I need it, because I know I would rather have a good time doing this and have it be adapted than pay for it later.
yep.
So that's kind of how everything changed when I started as a travel agent.
Yeah, because, obviously in two out of the three of these pictures, you look like not a care in the world,
Yeah.
So, and I think that's so true. Like people are like, oh, like even, I share pictures from my time in Europe when and I just remember like being in like Greece one time and I just was having this massive migraine, which, I just like I look at that picture still and I see the pain, but everybody's like, oh man, that's so cool. And it was cool. But then I was also like, like I yelled at the flight attendant because she tried to open the freaking window on the way home because I was just in the middle of this, what ended up being a massive infection in my face again, but it was impacting, like it was inflaming in my, everything in my face. And so like the airplanes made it worse, the heat made it worse, everything made it worse. And then she was like, oh, we have to open this for landing. I'm like, what is he going to be looking out the back of the plane in my window to see if it's safe to land? Like, leave it closed, lady. And they walk
Hmm.
through with the perfume cart, like, because they do a lot of duty free stuff over here. And so they would walk through with like the duty free cart and there'd be perfume on there and it was just laid out for forever. So
Hmm.
it's definitely definitely something to that just is so individualized to each person, and our own experiences can really help us shape that for others. So tell us a
Hmm.
little bit about a trip you planned for others, or special considerations that may have come up in accessibility. Sometimes people like a lot of times what I tell people is they don't realize that people don't realize that they need an accessible travel plan, especially people like this, right? That might have more medical or autoimmune or a chronic pain going on. And
Hmm.
so, do you have a story of someone that you've helped that maybe something came up that you weren't
Hmm.
realizing, or you learned something? Do you have a story like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I can think of one family where the wife is a physical therapist and she has a heart condition and she's sensitive to gluten and dairy. And so they hike probably 7 miles, and that's like an easy hike for them. But she did have some accessibility needs, as far as like, considering, because they're going to Machu Picchu, Peru. And so, like, considering the altitude's a little bit different than where they live, and, making sure that she has access to food that's safe for her. So, those were some considerations. And she's pretty easy because she's aware of her needs and things like that and can advocate for herself. But there's some people, where you talk to them, and like you said, you didn't realize that they had POTS, which could affect their, blood pressure and their ability to tolerate heat and things like that. So as I get to know people and talk with them, if they're willing to share those things with me, that really helps guide, um, I guess, your itineraries and what you suggest and things like that. And I've had other people where they thought that they couldn't travel because of like severe mast cell issues, which is like you can go into anaphylaxis if you come into contact with something. And a lot of times those allergies can change from day to day, and it can come into effect if you have stress and things like that. So we really discussed like she wanted to go on a train trip, and the worry was like having to wipe down her entire space and like lay down sheets and things like that so that she's not touching things that she could possibly be allergic to. So I kind of guided her to like, what if you stayed in the place that you want to travel to and like had a home base, and you can wipe that down and make it, you know, as great as it can be for you. And then you don't have to worry about packing up and then starting that, like, I don't want to say sanitization process, but like making it safe for her. So little things like that is what we do as accessible travel planners.
Yeah, I talked to someone who had an airborne allergy to peanuts, and that is really limiting because even if someone's eating it, on the plane in another row, like she can have an allergic, she can go into anaphylaxis just by breathing peanut dust in. It's like
Yeah.
it's just like people are just dealing with a lot of stuff that as we become more global and we some of these conditions are a result of our declining food quality and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it can be a good thing. Like people who come from the States, and I've seen multiple people who came from the States and then they eat the food over here in Europe, and um, they suddenly they can eat a little bit of dairy or gluten. I mean, there's the autoimmune conditions, there's allergies, and then sometimes the things that they're allergic to, they aren't over here. So there's always that goes into it. So yeah, and that's funny. I saw what Ian just said about, poor Aunt really, she thought she was going to plan my trip and now she's got me on her team. Like that's something kind of cool that we can do because that happens along the way where we see these people who are really proactive, like Ian's now in our CATP community and all that kind of stuff, and has a lot of rich knowledge in a totally different way to bring to the table. And so it's kind of cool because that's how we pick up people along the way. They become, they might start off by using us and then they become their own travel agent. And now he's building something pretty special over there in the UK.
Mhm.
All right. Well, anything else um you want to report or you good?
Um, I loved that you said like travel isn't a reward for being healthy. Like that's so true. And
Yeah.
I think it's just a great way to look at things because like before I thought, it's just too much of a pain or I'm gonna like pay for it later if I travel. But now just like seeing the adaptations and things like that really open up the world for me. So I just love that you said
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I love you post so many good things and it was like accessibility is not just about a ramp, whether a ramp
Mhm.
is there or not. That's it. That's the whole post.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
like, one of the things that we struggle with is that, we're in a lot of these accessible travel groups, like these huge Facebook groups and this is becoming more of a thing is that a lot of times I see advice being given, people ask, well, I'm in a scooter and I have, rheumatoid arthritis and can I still go on this trip? And other people who are coming from nothing but their lived experience or, you know, whatever the case may be are saying, oh yeah, you can, I don't, I know that, I don't know if I'm saying your name right, Venetia or whatever, but she's talking about it's 38 degrees. That's like close, I think about 100 degrees Fahrenheit for anyone who's doing that. That's very hot, right? And so she might love it. No AC, does, is used to it. That's how I used to live in Hawaii. But someone else with a chronic condition, it would just be leveling to not have the air conditioning, to not be able to cool off, all that kind of stuff. And there's just no, I just see so much bad advice being given in Facebook groups. And I think that's why, and we're going to talk about that right now, creating this community of people that are skilled in helping people and getting to the root of it and just how we go about things because um, I think it's really dangerous for people to give advice or even travel agents who don't have special training but might have a special condition themselves, It's still like you look at like autistic kids going who want to go to Disney World. That's a huge thing. Their families want to travel. They're at the travel age. Family travel is huge, intergenerational travel, and we just see people scrambling in all these interesting places. So that's the kind of change that we're aiming to make. So I've always been super happy since day one to have you as part of
Oh,
the
thanks.
team.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay. So what makes the difference with us? This slide got kind of messed up and I got tired of fixing it. Understanding destination accessibility, medical resources, and accommodation options before you travel, getting the right support, working with specialists who understand chronic conditions and can advocate for your specific needs, and the right knowledge using checklists, templates, and planners designed specifically for travelers with health considerations, getting the right tools. I think that's reversed, but anyways, you don't have to figure it all out alone. Yes, that is backwards, but that you guys get it. Okay, I'm going to move on from this slide because I don't like it. Um, all right. So we have three main pathways for people. We have three main groups of people who are getting on our calls now, especially since we've globally launched accessible travel planners and the certified accessible travel planner path. So the first path is you can get personalized help. If you're someone who got past this call or got past the information for this class, who might deal with chronic conditions or maybe just multiple medical complexities, and you need help, you can work with a certified accessible travel planner who specializes in chronic conditions. I'm going to give you guys an option to fill out a form if you to get the right kind of help or training or whatever you're ready for. But so if you're someone who wants to take a trip, you're not taking a trip, you can actually fill out the form and we'll get you in touch with one of our CATPs like Amberly or Ian or a bunch of other people on this call. Some of them are waiting in my inbox to become CATPs. So become your own advocate. If you don't necessarily have to go the certification route and all that kind of stuff, although I make it as affordable as possible. You can learn to confidently plan your own accessible travel through our specialized tools, templates, and training. We help you develop skills to research accommodations, communicate needs effectively, and create a contingency plan for flares or emergencies. So, regardless of what you got going on, if this sounds like something you can become a travel agent and take advantage of all the industry training and plus the course that I offer for travel professionals. And then you can opt to become a CATP if you want to. But if you're really just wanting to dig into this for yourself, the knowledge, the course becomes a guide at some point. So we really want to like have people get the knowledge for themselves as well as their friends and family maybe. And we also have a new course called Accessible uh, Journeys. I think that's what I called it, but it's a spin-off of the travel professional course that's just for people who may have if they're not quite ready to become a travel agent themselves or a travel planner of some sort. You can take this course and it's a spinoff where we aim the conversation a little bit differently. So if you're a caregiver, if you're a healthcare professional, or someone like that that's not quite ready to start a business of some sort, but you want to get the knowledge, we have that course now available, um, soon available. It was supposed to be available months ago, but my life is interesting right now and I wasn't expecting it. So, or you can become a travelpreneur and turn your passion into purpose. So transform your lived experiences or your professional background into a meaningful career as a travelpreneur specializing in accessible travel. Help others with similar conditions while earning income, planning services, resources, creation, or community building. And also, if you are already a travel agent, not part of my organization, we now have the option for you to come in and also become part of our community and whatnot. So I will be sure to that the form that we fill out, please put that you're already a travel agent and you just want the course. And I will get you in there as well. Um, So, let's see how to take the next steps. You can actually we're actually going to fill out this form, so you don't need to, you decide on the path you want to have a conversation with me later. Um, and enroll in the course that works for you, take the path you want, all that kind of stuff. One of the things that sets us apart, which is the main reason I wanted to have the slide, is that we have a growing resource list that as we discover new things for ourselves and our clients, we add them. It's just a giant Google database Google Sheets. So we have access to that, whether you buy the course for yourself or as a travel professional, you will have access to that as well. And then you can also help us grow that as you go through this process. And then each course has its own Facebook group too, where you can ask questions if you're not in the certified community or you're just needing to get a little bit of help. We're making guides. So everything's kind of still in development, but just being connected with my overall travel team just passed 600 people active as travel agents. So we're a quickly growing group, and probably half of those have bought the course. I've had over 400 people total buy the course, and then now we're a growing number of the actual certified accessible travel planner, which is just really after you go through the course, you pay a fee, and then you do um, uh, you do it's basically like you're doing a travel plan. You pick a scenario. I have different scenarios based on which type of accessible travel you want to look more at. And then you go through, you show me your process that you go through for contacting them, what vendors you use, or all that different kind of stuff. And then create an itinerary. And then once you're done with that, then I pass you and you can become part of the community. So that's the certification pathway. I don't think I actually highlighted that enough in this. Um, so uh, which pathway do you want to take as an accessible travelpreneur? Um, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Your first step is to simply believe in yourself and that travel is possible for yourself and others. So please fill out this form and let's get connected. I will also put this in the comments. So thank you so much. I'm actually going to stop sharing. My email is hello@accessible travel planners. You can go learn more at accessibletravelplanners.com. But the best way is to get into a conversation with me or the person who referred you onto this call, and or I'm always happy to talk with people in chats. And I don't do a lot of let me get that link. I don't do a lot of in-person phone calls or Zoom calls because of my own limitations and my time difference a lot of times. So yeah, so that's um, but I am active in WhatsApp, Messenger, all Telegram, all the things. So and I get in there and answer usually within 12 to 24 hours. Let me just get in here and share the link in there. Um, and you can always email too. All right. So, message to everyone. There's the form. And then I'll send it out with the replay email as well. You can click on that and get into that. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you guys so much. Oh, we went a little longer than I was thinking. Okay, so stop.